Wow, that round of applause was staggering. Really appreciate that. Well, thank you to the whole team, Daniel, to Julius, and to the FAI folks, the American Affairs folks, to put this together. It's been a pretty phenomenal event. For reasons that aren't entirely clear, I guess probably to summon people back from coffee, they decided that 10 minutes of a Jeremiah of a talk here would be useful. So I wanted to paint a little bit of a picture. It's a little bit different than what we've heard so far today. Imagine, if you will, that you're in pre-Columbian or maybe immediately post-discovery New World, examining the bounty of the aquatic life. And you could put yourself on the vessel of a Basque fisherman, complaining about the teeming hordes of cod, literally slowing down the fishing vessels off the Grand Banks. So thick were they on the ground. Or you might find yourself like a 1700 era whaler, leaving Narragansett or Providence, observing whales from horizon to horizon, frolicking in the ocean. Or even perhaps more improbably and harder to imagine, you could put yourself in the Chesapeake Bay, looking down at the crystalline waters and seeing the incredibly dense beds of oysters as big as plates filtering out the Chesapeake Bay, and leaving a bounty that is almost impossible for colonists to imagine. So just to keep all those thoughts in your mind, or the last one that is my favorite is a dense pod of cephalopods, so thick that you can't actually even see to the bottom of the ocean. So I promise I'll deliver on that one, but just keep that image in your mind. So I think where we are right today is fitting for the theme of this little talk, which is we're kind of twilight illumination in the room. Not quite casino lighting, but I think it's about appropriate. Because I think that we're in the twilight of the administrative state, which is a phrase I like to use to describe, and it kind of aptly captures the decline in our ability to build things in America. I think others might say state capacity. You've heard a lot of references to it in various specific ways, but I like the phrase because I think it captures an even worse picture of America, that decline in capacity is also reflecting a decline in what America actually has become. Things are worse than they seem. And it's easy to forget in a beautiful place like Union Station, though we got hints of it on the previous panelist mentioned something to the effect of, it's always awe-inspiring to come to DC and look at what previous generations were able to build when they had the will to build it. But the implication is a little bit dire, which is that we don't have the will or the ability to build great things anymore. And I think there's, Representative Fleischman mentioned some of the supply chain issues with nuclear vessels. We heard a mention of the absence of a new cement plant in the past 20 years. These are all breadcrumbs, and I'm just here to tell you that it's way worse. Everything is actually way worse than you assume. If you look at our built environment, for example, the physical infrastructure that surrounds us is utterly controlled by the twin fell hands of automotive regulatory capture and prescriptive zoning. The built environment that we walk out from this big, beautiful building out into is now, I think, one of the greatest weapons to urban thriving, or against urban thriving. Some of our urban cores are at 50% parking alone, which is roughly equivalent to the amount of damage that Dresden suffered in the firebombing in terms of actual building collapse. I mean, that sounds like a joke, but it's actually a roughly comparable stat. There's a freeway interchange outside of Atlanta that could hold, one freeway interchange that could hold all of medieval Florence. So 500 years ago, a very small patch of dirt in Italy gave birth to the progenitor, eventually of the Industrial Revolution, certainly the intellectual Renaissance, and we managed to do one freeway exchange that could hold that entire cradle of civilization. So it's even worse than that, though I will say our very ability to socialize, to nurture, make friends, to build communities, to build civic organizations has collapsed. If you look at the work of Donald Appleyard, you'll see that cars have literally vivisected our communities, and Bowling Alone of Robert Putnam fame. These ties that bind us have been severed in ways that we find it hard to even recognize today. But I'd say good news, it's even worse than that. If you look at the 1970s, we fell off the Adams curve, which, of those of you who aren't tracking, was coined by Henry Adams, or at least those who have kind of packaged up his writings. Observing America in the 1800s, he noticed that there was roughly a consistent 7% growth in energy consumption on an annual basis. So year over year, we were increasing our capacity to generate energy by about 7%. And of course, that corresponded with the landmark industrialization of America and some of the most incredible transition of a country that has ever happened. But we fell off then in the 1970s. A pretty horrifying decade, which gave us a lot of terrible things. Fortunately, it also gave us disco, so at least it had that going for it. But that's when we fell off that's when we fell off the Adams curve, which is a profound shift in civilizational direction and capacity. But that's a pretty big macro point. There's one that's even more horrifying to me, and it's dangerous to say this in a room full of people who know a lot of energy because somebody's going to fly spec this stat. But if you look at the number of high voltage power lines that we're building in the United States, in 2010 it was 1,900 per year, over an installed base of more than 600,000 or so high voltage power lines, roughly, give or take. And in 2023, as best as I can see, there were 55 miles built. So if we're just cherry picking the last 13 years of stats, that's a 3% of what it was from 13 years before. Which is an absolute collapse. There's no other way to describe it. So I think the reason that I flag all these grim stats about where we've gotten to in the twilight of the administrative state is because it is really important for us to frame what we think of or how we think of energy in this incredible moment. There's obviously going to be tremendous pressure on the grid, tremendous demands for energy as AI and reindustrialization both bring enormous new sources of energy consumption to America. And a lot of people like to frame it as this amazing opportunity, and I do think there is obviously lots of opportunity. But I do think the phrase of the conference is advised. If we want our country to have a small to mid-sized industrial base, if we want thriving commercial and industrial activity in America, we have to win on energy. I think the OpenAI guys earlier said that the cost of intelligence is the cost of energy. I'd say the cost of America is the cost of energy. If we don't have the ability to deliver distributed baseload energy to our industrial base, the collapse could be dramatic and it could be swift. If you look at Germany, just after 2 years of high energy prices post-Ukraine conflict, 40% of businesses were looking at relocating production capacity out of Germany. That's how quick the capital flight and the planning happens. I think we saw within 18 months of the invasion and the soaring in natural gas prices, high double-digit increase or decreases in actual production in Germany and other areas affected by those high energy prices. So I think the challenge that we have is that if we want to reindustrialize America, if we want to maintain a small to mid-sized industrial base, energy really is everything, and it is the ultimate dependency. So to lighten up a little bit from my grim picture, I think there's 3 recommendations I give that we can not really put into practice directly so much as I think aspirationally. The first is I'd say we have to have greater ambition. Fortunately, I didn't hear it at this conference, but I was at a gathering. I won't say which trade association put it on in New York. And we spent 45 minutes at the end of a panel talking about the critical importance the most important factor for advanced nuclear to succeed and for energy policy was cost overrun insurance. To which I would say, yes, the cost overrun insurance that saved Uber when they were deploying billions of dollars of capital. The cost overrun insurance that flying car companies like Joby had when they were building eVTOLs. The cost overrun insurance that fundamentally was what allowed Henry Ford to give birth to the automotive revolution. Obviously, this is all tongue-in-cheek. I think cost overrun insurance is hiding behind the fact that you need to have risk appetite in capital, which means that you need to have a willingness to take greater ambitious steps than would otherwise be required by, or that cost overrun insurance would otherwise fit into. So that's one that I would reject. And also, as a quick, greater ambition here, we hear a lot of concerns about capital, particularly in the nuclear industry. Is there going to be enough ways to finance this? There was a panel about financing energy. We're talking about energy here, people. GoPuff raised $3.4 billion, okay? That and their entire industry, their ambition was to make it easier for you to eat crappy industrial food in your pajamas at home. And they raised tens of billions of dollars and actually deployed them. Something tells me that the substrate of the modern industrial economy, the energy industry, is going to be able to find capital So I think we need to have greater ambition as a category. The second is I think we need to have more suffering. There need to be more companies that are willing to absolutely suffer through the miserable regulatory processes, including fixing the regulatory processes, given the incredible window of opportunity we have in Trump 2.0. But that requires people to commit not just their firms, but also individuals to go in and do the dirty work of actually undoing the harm of the 75-year experiment in administrative state sclerosis. And then I think the third thing that we need, and this is more of an indication than an ambition, but we need more failure. The best sign that we're thriving in energy innovation is going to be new firm formation and new firm collapse. We need to have people testing out ambitious modes of delivering energy, pushing the limits on what technologies might be useful, and then ultimately, ideally many of them succeeding, but many of them failing. So speaking of, I think failure and churn is the sign of a successful ecosystem. And speaking of ecosystems, I'd call to mind again that superabundance of the new world, those happy cetaceans and the horde of cephalopods. So if we want to realize an America that's teeming with industrial and commercial life, we need to avoid an energy trophic cascade. And so my call to action here is, so if you want to see a thriving industrial base, if you want our country to reindustrialize, and daggone it, if you're a red-blooded American, then energy acceleration is not an option, it's imperative. Thanks.